Before we begin, a gentle reminder, the information shared during the MyDiabetesHQ live broadcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical condition. This weekly broadcast is developed and produced by Cities Changing Diabetes volunteers in Houston and Philadelphia. Our two cities are the U.S. members of a global network of 36 cities working to improve diabetes prevention, care, and management all around the world. You can learn more about Cities Changing Diabetes by going to citieschangingdiabetes.org. Today, we will welcome Cities Changing Diabetes Core Team members, Serena Valentine. She is CEO of Core Initiatives, a nonprofit here in Houston, and she also is the diabetes peer support leader here. Reva Verma, CEO of Reneka App Builders, and she also is a powerful advocate for all of those living with diabetes. And Maryanne Strobel. Hi, Maryanne. She's back today after being away to do amazing, wonderful things. She's a registered nurse and steering committee member of the Diabetes Disaster Response Coalition. So as educators and advocates, everyone, we meet people every day living with diabetes challenges who say, I wish I knew. So let's all get started. We've prepared some questions with the help of the team and insight from the Houston peer support members, but we want to hear you, the viewers, your lessons too. Leave us a comment below for us to read and share with other viewers, because you never know who you can help by some of your learned experiences as well. So ladies, are we ready?
We're ready.
All right. So should we begin with the very first one? Let's talk about, I wish I knew I could change doctors and second opinions. Who wants to take that?
I will. I wish I knew that I could change doctors. I get a lot of people in peer support who come in and they say, well, I'm not really comfortable with my doctor. We don't vibe. I feel like my doctor's not listening. You know, they've got me on this medication. Don't know. It's not, I feel like it's not working. My body doesn't feel right. So I asked them, I say, so is that the only doctor in your network? They're like, oh. I'm like, okay, well, if you're not feeling comfortable, then maybe you should think about changing doctors, you know. And that's one thing that a lot of people feel like, you know, they don't have, like, it almost feels like they don't have a right to change doctors, but it's not true. It's a free country. You know, you're paying for your insurance. You have a right to choose who you want on your healthcare team. So I always tell people, and I've done so myself. If I don't feel comfortable, I change. Like, I don't have a problem changing.
I'll add to that too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maryanne.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think what we sometimes as patients forget is that healthcare providers are people too. And so they all have their own unique personality, and there could be something in their, you know, background and their life that has them react a certain way, you know, to diabetes. It's so, you know, prevalent, you know, chances are that they could have somebody in their family with diabetes. And so while as professionals, we shouldn't do that. We're all human. And sometimes we carry that with us as we, you know, go forward to treat patients. So like Serena says, if it's not working, you know, then it's just not working, and, you know, move forward and find someone that works better with you.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, like you said, Maryanne, because people are people and clinicians are people as well, we just have different personalities. We may not vibe with everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes if you let a clinician know the way that you like to hear information or receive information, what can happen is they can tell you a colleague that they think would be a perfect match for you. So just, you know, saying something is a good idea. Reva, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say almost exactly what you just said too. People receive information differently. Some people want to be told, hey, this is how it's going to be. And then other people prefer to feel like they have some emotional support in their care so they don't feel shamed. That was a big problem for me personally. I would have anxiety going into doctor's appointments because I felt like I was going to be shamed. So when I expressed that to people in my network, it was almost like me reaching out to peer support, asking for a recommendation for providers that would align with how I best receive that type of care.
That is so great. I love hearing that. That's it's perfect. It's exactly what I think, sometimes we think about it as a negative by sort of breaking up with your doctor, but it doesn't have to be, they just may not be a match for you. All right. So let's bring in the next one while we wait for people to share with us. So diabetes treatment options. So having a good chat or a good conversation, just like we said before with your clinician, for those of you listening out there, who was the person who kind of let you know that you could have a different medical treatment option than the one that you were given at first? Let us know. What about you all? Did you ever have to have that conversation, Serena, Reva?
I did. So I started off at Texas Children's, and I was in a very typical type of care protocol. Take your shots, go in for a doctor's appointment. They would check your logbook that you would write in and fill in. Very traditional care. And it wasn't until I was in college that so I had left Texas Children's, gone on to another doctor, same thing, not very personalized care. It was just kind of the plug and play type of method. Then I had the opportunity back to Texas Children's and be in this program for, what we refer to as that black hole, where you're not a child, so you don't need child's care anymore, but you're not fully an adult. So you're right in the middle of that transition period. So I was introduced to, I don't know, are we allowed to say names on this show? Or just refer to people?
Refer to individuals.
Okay. Well, I was reintroduced to Dr. Kushner. I had met him a while ago, but he reached out to me and he was like, I'm piloting this program that's, more geared towards a whole care type of program, mental health, nutrition, and diabetes care. And he took this approach of making me part of the solution rather than just telling me this is what you have to do. And that really shifted my perspective going forward, because we would both look at the numbers and he would he's a data geek, I'm a data geek. So we would go and look at all the points on the graph and be like, okay, this probably was because I exercised too hard. This was probably because I ate a carb-heavy meal. So we talked about transitioning my diet also, which was very important, which then also led into mental health. So it was this whole body from head to toe, inside to outside type of approach that was really cool for me to be part of.
Yeah,
that's great.
Oh, that is. I think that I've gone over the years, my patients have taught me to ask the question when they come in, what would you like to learn today? And so I think that that's really, a lot of times as clinicians, we're taught a curriculum and everything is in a set order. And that's how you learn, that's part of our very basic learning on paper out of books, is to learn in an outline form. But when you take diabetes knowledge, you have to apply it on top of living. And living can be messy. It's out of order. It's kind of as it comes. And so I think that's really important, Reva, to your point, with letting someone know that they are a part of the conversation. It's all part of shared decision making, and also making sure that a treatment plan works for someone's life and schedule. I had a patient say to me just yesterday, actually, I wish I knew that I could check my blood glucose values at a different time than what they told me I had to, because some of the reasons she didn't have some of her points was because she was given a specific time, you know, and she would go to bed or be busy at the time. So I told her, just check it, you know, an hour earlier, and this is what the range will be. It'll be a little different, but this is your journey. And she was like, wow, well, I've never heard that before. I wish I knew. So it's kind of timely that we're doing this now. Has that been your experience, Maryanne?
Well, working in the inpatient setting, you know, and in regards to, you know, different, I wish I knew different treatment options and things like that. So because our hospital has a formulary, and that means it's a matter of certain medications that are routinely ordered, because that's what we have in the hospital. And then many of the physicians, when patients are getting discharged, will either discharge them back on their medications for diabetes that they had prior to coming to the hospital, or if it's something new that they started in the hospital, they'll discharge them on that. And again, it's kind of restrictive because they're only going to go off of the formulary of diabetes medications that we normally prescribe in the hospital. So my job as the diabetes educator is to, you know, talk with people. And like you said, what do you want to learn today? And if I hear any barriers, such as, you know, people are having trouble, you know, taking their injections with a syringe, they may not know about things like insulin pens. They don't know that they could have something like a continuous glucose sensor if they're having trouble not recognizing when they go low. So, you know, even insulin pumps, many people still come into the hospital and don't know that there is this device called an insulin pump. And so it provides an opportunity as an educator to provide those treatment, not really options, but the treatment information that's out there, and then to encourage them to work with their prescriber and their provider in order to see what is best for them. And like Reva said, sometimes it'll be shared decision making. And for some people, they, you know, just want the advice and the care from their physician.
So good, guys. Okay, well, let's go to the next one. We've got, oops, that's the same. This one here. This is one that Reva and Serena have spoken to before. That is very, very important and critical to self-care. So this one says, it's okay to feel overwhelmed, depressed, frustrated, and there are ways to deal with it. I wish I knew. I'll let you guys take over.
Okay. Well, a lot of people don't realize that, well, they don't realize it until they actually actively start, you know, working on their health. And so it can get overwhelming. There is a full daily routine just with managing your diabetes that can be overwhelming. To add that to your daily life routines, it can get overwhelming and frustrating. Sometimes you forget to do things, and it's okay because you're doing a lot. You know, you're also processing in your brain. Okay, now I've got this diabetes I have to deal with, and if I'm going to live the best quality of my life, I'm going to have to manage it. You know, it doesn't always even get that to that point, because sometimes people are stuck at diagnosis and they're like, some people shut down. They don't want to deal with it, you know, but it's okay to feel that way. It's perfectly fine. It means you're human. You know, it's okay to feel that way. So there are different ways to deal with it. Shameless plug, Houston Diabetes Peer Support. Okay. We help people. I get questions all the time about I don't feel good. I'm doing okay with my blood sugar, but I'm not feeling good. Well, we have people you can talk to. If you go on Facebook and type in the search bar, Houston Diabetes Peer Support Program, we will let you in the group, and you can share. People share their experiences. People share information. You never know how much information you can get from someone else who's dealing with the same things that you are dealing with. Everybody has their different quirks, but everyone in the group is dealing at some point in their life with diabetes, and we all learn from each other. So, even if it's not ours, even if it's not Houston Diabetes Peer Support Program, find a peer support program somewhere, because peer support really does help.
Mm-hmm. And, it's that collective wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the collective wisdom that we depend on for so many other things in life too. Mothers have, mommy baby clubs, and you learn a lot from other people who are going through, because they're actually walking in the path. And so it's super important. I love that idea of peer support. And then recognizing, I think, when it's time to your peer supporters, or even someone in your family can recognize when it's time to ask for help. So time to reach out to your clinician and say, okay, this is really, recognizing it first, and then saying, this is really something that I can't handle on my own. Do you have a suggestion for me? Do you have plans for me?
Well, to that point also, I think there should be some ownership from the physician's side too. Like, if you see that your patient is coming in and their numbers are all over the place, or their numbers are non-existent, and you start to ask them questions about what's going on in their personal lives, and like try to get some context around maybe why they're struggling with diabetes, the clinicians, I would hope that they would reach out sooner than they typically do, and suggest that they see a counselor or a psychologist, or introduce them to these peer support groups, because a lot of times people don't realize that they do need help, or that, that if they had an additional layer of support, that they would be able to take control in a quicker and more efficient way. And then also keep in mind, people living with diabetes make hundreds of decisions every single day without even realizing it. Most of the time we're on autopilot and we're just going through the motions. But that weighs down on someone over time. And there's nothing wrong in going to someone and maybe being diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and having medication to help you with that, and going to therapy to help you with that. These are tools that I think, or I would wish, would be more talked about, because people with chronic diseases have an increased, what's the word I'm looking for? But
it's stressors and
right, yeah. And so they're more, well, depression and anxiety is more prevalent with people who have chronic diseases. That's what I was trying to get at. And it just needs to be talked about more, and be more acceptable to reach out for help, and for people to offer help if that person doesn't realize they need it.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like both of you have mentioned, I think just telling a person who is either newly diagnosed with diabetes, or perhaps doesn't have as much of a support team, having that conversation. And I like that you said that, Reva, because I think Maryanne and I allude to how much we do this. But it's also, from us telling our peers, you have to do this. It's really great hearing it from someone living with diabetes saying, no, it's not just something that is, a talking point for other clinicians. It's something that we actually want to hear from you, to get your perspective and know that that's super, super important. I tell some of my patients that I see that are struggling, that maybe can't give voice to what they're feeling. I say to them, exactly what Serena said. You are doing everything during the day. You are living your life like everyone else is, but then you've got this added thing of making sure that you know what time it is to check your blood glucose. You know what you're eating. You're taking measurements, even if they're in your head. you're taking your medication before and after, you're considering what you're next going to eat, when you're next going to exercise, how that influences every single decision that you make every 15 minutes is an additional stressor on your mind, on your life. It's okay. And if you need help, these are the things that we have available. And sometimes the first time may not be the time that someone says, yes, for sure, but they'll take it, process it, and then come back maybe to the next visit or call in and say, you know, Miss Joy, I was thinking about it and I really do think that I do need some help. Maybe I can just start with talking to somebody and just one-on-one, and then I can maybe think about a group setting. And I'm like, all right, let's do there. Let's start there. And so just telling people and giving a voice to their pain allows them to manage their pain and gives them support. So you all are so great. I love it. Love talking to y'all. So anything else on the topic? I think we've shared clinician, patient. What about supporter?
Well, I just think, as far as being a supporter, whether it's a family member or it's, teaching other clinicians, that I wish I knew sooner than I did, that it's okay to, bring the conversation forward and state that, people with diabetes don't go to sleep at night. If they don't already have diabetes, people don't go to bed at night and say, gee, I hope I have diabetes in the morning. And unfortunately, for so long, it's been that way that people somehow perceive that people with diabetes actually sought out getting the disease. People are blamed for having the disease. And I think that, I wish I knew earlier in my professional career as a nurse, before I became involved in diabetes, that it's okay to say, no, stop, that's not right. People are not out actively seeking getting this disease. They are in a way a victim of getting the disease, not a victim of living with the disease, but they are a victim of getting the disease just like any other disease. And we have to stop blaming people for having the disease. Whether you're have a family member who has diabetes or whether you're a clinician working with people with diabetes, I wish that I knew that earlier and I was a champion earlier.
But you are now, Maryanne, and you are a very loud voice. And I think this is a really good segue. I know you didn't intend it, but I love what you just said, that you wish you knew sooner you could be a champion and sort of battle down the stigma that comes with diabetes. And so today on MyDiabetesHQ, we would like to, the three of us would like to, and all of our team members, Christian Salas behind the scene, Umesh Verma, Klaus Madsen, Karen, we all want to say congratulations for your appointment by the governor to the Texas Diabetes Council.
Thank you.
And there is not a better person, a better champion that we can imagine who's going to be out there, speaking up for change and doing it on that level. So thank you. Girls, you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for supporting me.
Yeah.
I will do my best to keep being a champion.
We can't wait to see the things that happen. We just can't. Yes. Thank you.
Well, we're all in it together. Like I said, it takes the whole world. That's why we have Cities Changing Diabetes. That's why there's, all these cities banding together. It's not just an isolated problem. People are living with this all over the world and it's exploding more and more. And so we really do need to, dispel all the myths that are out there so that people can live very, very well. Because you can live very, very well with this condition. And we just need to be there to help support everyone and not make it harder for them with both Reva and Serena have said, with all the stressor of all the multiple decisions that they have to make constantly all the time.
Yeah. You guys, it's so great. Let's segue into a little bit about nutrition. So this is going to set the table, I guess, for next week's nutrition segment here when we have Jessica Isaacs, the sports dietitian, on with us talking about food and the context of food in terms of managing disease and conditions, and also just health in general. So this is one from, I think, one of your peer support members, right, Serena?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it says, I wish I knew, shout out to Houston Diabetes peer support members. They wish that they knew they could continue to eat the things that they've always eaten. All right, let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm. That's actually from me too, low key. Because there was a lot of times I would, I don't even know how to explain it. I burdened myself down with trying to do different diets, trying to find out different ways to keep my blood sugar regulated, because I knew that I was eating bad all the time, but I didn't know that sometimes it was okay to eat some of the things that I already been eating. And that like freed my mind. When Joy told me that, I was like, what? Because especially when I was pregnant, I had cravings. I had really bad cravings, but I was like, well, I got diabetes, so I'm just gonna have to pretend that it's not there. And it was bad on my mental. It was bad because when you're pregnant, you want what you want at that moment, and it's like you want to be able to eat it, and you just didn't. When I heard Joy tell me, well, you could have had that, and I'm like, are you serious? So yeah, that's that. And also I've heard peer support members say, well, I'm depressed because I can't have this, I can't have that, I can't have that, I can't have that. And I'm like, don't do that to yourself. Just a lot of things are about portions, and I'm not a nutritionist, but it's just some things that I've learned. Portion control, and sometimes you can still eat what you want to eat. And that even includes people come to me about their religious traditions, about the food that they eat traditionally. And for example, someone came to me about communion. It's either wine or grape juice, and it's a wafer or a cracker. And they're like, but doesn't that cracker have carbohydrates in it? I'm like, you're only gonna eat a small it's not like you're gonna take the whole box and go or drink a whole jug of grape juice or wine. It's like, it's okay to continue those things. So yeah.
And I think people forget that traditions and cultural norms and faith-based traditions are very, very, very important to spiritual and mental health. And so you want to make sure that in learning about diabetes and about when you can eat different things, you can add other things around it to help support glucose values. You can hydrate around it. You can move around it. You can adjust your medication doses. These are all conversations to have with your clinician. And I saw an interesting article today that someone had posted on my LinkedIn that they were talking about the field of dietetics and diabetes education is slated to grow about 15 to 20% by 2026, which is monumental. The role that we play in bridging those kinds of personal conversations with you and your clinician are massive. I can go to a clinician and say, it's Easter weekend and someone is having pasteles, and, could we adjust basal insulin for that Easter meal with my patient's family? And the physician's going to say, yes, of course, I want that person to be involved in, Easter celebration, which is very spiritual and very, for a year and a half, people have been away from their family family members suffering through a lot of, loneliness and things like that. So those are conversations that we had this week about the holiday coming up, and then how you adjust back to your previous plans after the holidays.
Right.
So next week we'll learn and talk a lot more about nutrition and, approaching it from a total health and wellness standpoint versus restrictive. Because I think for too long, and Reva, Serena, you could tell me if you heard differently in your management trainings over the years, but for my family, I remember very specifically my dad coming home and saying that he had a woman for an hour to tell him not to eat food. And so I was very confused, I was like, what did she say you could eat? My high school me was like into biology and chemistry. And I was like loving the scientific approach to metabolism. And he was like, she just said, don't eat beans and don't eat rice and don't eat potatoes and don't eat corn and don't eat fruit and don't eat mango and don't eat yucca and don't eat. I mean, it was like a list of everything that matters to your Bajan roots, don't eat. And it was, I vowed that I would be a very different dietitian. And so I think that a lot of my patients come in and they're just shocked. They're like, so you're going to let me eat that? Yeah, we're going to work out. So what do you, is that kind of how you all received? And Maryanne, you can say too, because you were a supporter for so many years.
Well, I just tell patients that, we eat for many different reasons, just like you were bringing up. We eat because we're hungry and we need to eat for nourishment, but we also eat because it tastes good and it's fun to eat. And it's also, we eat because it's an experience, going to a birthday party, or going out to dinner or whatever. What I do try to help them with is exactly what you said, which is kind of planning. So, when we talk about birthday parties, I tell them about, things that they can do before they go to the party, and some of the foods they can actually bring with them to the party, and how to kind of eat them in progression. But, it's kind of a stressor too, because you got to think about these things. But I also tell them that, the more times that they do it, the more autopilot type of way that it just becomes automatic, and that's just the way you do it from then on. And then we also talk sometimes about substitutions, of like, well, how can I make this dish healthier? And as some of you know, like I've got two family members, two of my kids that have celiac disease, which means they can't have wheat. And so my heritage is we have a lot of things made with wheat. So now we have to find recipes on how to make them without wheat. So, there's just different ways to do things. It doesn't mean you have to give up your heritage. It doesn't mean that you have to give up your family traditions. It just takes some thought. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. I felt a lot during my years living with diabetes that I got a long list of don't do's, and it can get frustrating, but like Maryanne, you're such a supporter. That should be your middle name, supporter, because I mean, a lot of people that I hear in peer support, they don't have that kind of support. So, which is why they reach out to peer support. And so, being that supporter kind of helps that there's somebody outside of you that can lend a helping hand, help you out, be like, hey, well, maybe you can eat that, but we can make it differently,
Right.
and, just to suggest other things to help you out. It is kind of hard and kind of isolating to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
But with that support, if it can help. And not only, because some people restrict support for just family members.
No,
Y'all
yeah,
have
that's
no
not good.
idea. CCD has been my support. Like when we talked about the things that I wish I knew and stuff like that. A lot of times I didn't know anything until I got around y'all, and I just started being like a fly on the wall. Like I'm listening. I know a lot of times in our meetings, y'all would say, "Well, Serena, you're quiet. You have anything to say?" I'm like, listening, because I take those nuggets and I use it in my own life, so other people can be your support. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Some people make the excuse, well, my family doesn't support me. It doesn't just have to be your natural biological family. It can be coworkers, it can be colleagues, it can be other people you speak with. You can be doing a community project with. You never know. You can reach and grab that support from anywhere. So just pay attention.
Good advice.
So let's bring it to the last one that we have on. And then if someone has something else. So this one is a big one. I do this probably once or twice a week, usually with someone. And this week, Serena and I talked about it, and Reva and I talked about it, and Maryanne and I talked about it. So I wish I knew. This one is about treating hypoglycemia. So I wish I knew I should hold my glucose tablet or gels or really anything that you're treating your blood glucose values with in your mouth. Can you talk to us about why, Maryanne?
Well, actually, I'm just going to give the credit right back to you because you educated me on this today. So, just to be honest, your diabetes clinicians, whether it's your physicians or your nurses or your diabetes care and education specialists, like we said earlier, they're humans, and it's okay as a clinician to say, gee, I don't know that. Let me find out the answer for you. So that's what I would have had to say to my patient if they had asked me this prior to learning from you today, Joy, that actually the glucose from the glucose tablets will absorb quicker because they'll absorb through the lining in the inside of your mouth. And actually, like I said, I didn't even know that. I always told my patients just to chew their glucose tablets. But it makes so much more sense after learning from you how much quicker it can work. And, both deferring here to both Serena and Reva on this, experiencing low blood sugars, I'm sure that you want them fixed as fast as possible and not having to wait. And then, also Joy brought up the point that, as you have diabetes longer and longer, sometimes you can have a little delay in how fast food moves from your stomach into the lower part of your digestive system. And so if that happens when you're chewing the glucose tablets and swallowing them, it could take a little bit longer for them to work. So I really like that Joy brought that forward today. And like I said, thank you for teaching me. So I always wish I knew to tell my patients that if you go to a clinician who always has an answer for you and they have that answer real quick, be a little suspicious, because anybody that says they know the answer to everything can be maybe not telling you quite the truth.
I didn't know that was a trick either, to just like hold it in your mouth. I think after learning that this week, I was like a bunch of calories, because when my blood sugar drops, and I'm like, I get in this mode, and I know a lot of people do too, where I just want to like stuff everything in my face. And then it's this roller coaster, right? Because you go from super low, then you jump up to like 300, 400, then you have to correct again. And then you're like, it's like these drastic spikes that they're not healthy. And it's like I'll look in the fridge and I'll be like, well, that looks good too. Now I want this. Now I want that. It's just like you go into this, I just have to eat. I just have to get my blood sugar up type of mode. And that delay sometimes makes you antsy too. So
it's definitely like really fight or flight, Reva.
Yeah.
It's like a natural, you want to save yourself. And so you just kind of go into everything. the really nice thing about it, and I kind of learned it from my dad, and then as I was, with the way that he managed and learned about his diabetes, and then as I remember conversations with him, and then on top of learning about things, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense as to why he did this, because clinically and physiologically, this is, what's going on in your body. And so, in order to avoid those roller coasters, if you can get rid of the symptoms really quickly, so holding anything that you're planning on correcting with that's a really fast sugar, you hold it in your mouth. If it's, if you only have pineapple juice, like some of my patients carry in their bags, or like those little tiny containers, or you only have like those marathon gels, or you only have tablets, whatever you have, hold it in your mouth. Because your symptoms, like the shaking, the confusion, the sweatiness, whichever your symptoms are to you, because those start to alleviate within 2 to 3 minutes, then you can go in the refrigerator and say, okay, let's see what I can actually have that's not just something. You can make better decisions because now you're safe.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. You guys are so great to me. And I learn all the time from you all as well. So like Serena was saying, I learn a lot of things from just advocating and being with other people who want to make diabetes better for everyone else. So thank you all for what you do all the time. All right. So to our viewers out there, if you want to post anything on under the video here and share with everyone else, remember that peer support works best because of the collaborative and collective knowledge of everyone who has walked a different path, perhaps with diabetes over the course of their lives. So we want to say again, thank you to our panel. You all are so amazing, so great, and very, very inspiring to me and for everyone that you do help. We have a quick survey on YouTube and Facebook where we'd like to get your feedback on the show and recommendations for future episodes. Please make MyDiabetesHQ live better by filling out the survey. Mark your calendars. We will continue to broadcast every Saturday, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. Our next episode will air on Saturday, April the 10th, when we will talk about nutrition with UCLA sport dietitian Jessica Isaacs. Thank you for being a part of the MyDiabetesHQ family. See you next time.